I never thought planning my wedding would mean choosing between my future and my family. My name is David, I'm 32, and I'm engaged to the most incredible woman I've ever met, Sarah. She's smart and grounded, and she makes me want to be a better man. We've been together for 5 years, and when I proposed, everything finally felt right. But the moment we shared the news, my mom's tone shifted. It's just, your sister's going through a lot right now, she said. My younger sister Lily had just gone through a whirlwind divorce after a 3-month marriage, and suddenly, my wedding became a problem. My mom thought celebrating my love was insensitive to Lily's heartbreak. At first, I thought it was just misguided concern. But what followed was a string of guilt trips, manipulation, and a line I never thought I'd have to draw. I uninvited my own family from the wedding. At first, I wanted to believe my mom meant well. I understood that Lily was in a rough place. Her marriage had crumbled just 2 months after the wedding. She'd caught her husband cheating with one of her best friends, no less. I wouldn't wish that kind of betrayal on anyone. But what I didn't understand was how my engagement, something Sarah and I had been planning long before Lily even met that guy, was now being treated like an attack. It's just poor timing, my mom said on the phone one night. Lily's still trying to heal. A big wedding, it's going to be hard for her. I stayed quiet. I'd learned over the years that silence was safer with my mom, but inside, I was stunned. Sarah and I had been engaged for 8 months. The venue was booked. The dress was picked. The invitations were going out next week. And suddenly, it was poor timing. Lily has always been the golden one. The one who could do no wrong. When we were kids, she'd break something, and I'd get blamed. She'd cry, and somehow it was my fault. I thought adulthood would change that dynamic, but apparently, some roles never shift. The worst part, Sarah started to feel it too. My mom would call and talk about how fragile Lily was, and how some people heal slower than others. Then she'd gently ask if Sarah had thought about maybe doing something simpler, a courthouse wedding, perhaps. Just until Lily's back on her feet. I could see it wearing Sarah down. She didn't say anything at first, but I could see it in the way she hesitated when finalizing the seating chart or picking out decorations. Like she was waiting for the next blow to come. And Lily, she never called, never texted congratulations, but she found time to post vague quotes on social media about people who only care about themselves, and how some wounds are made worse by family. We both knew who those were aimed at. I tried to stay neutral, tried to be the calm one, but something didn't sit right. I wasn't trying to rub anything in her face. This wasn't a competition. This was my life, my love, and it felt like it was being hijacked by someone else's pain. Still, I held my tongue. Hoped it would pass. Hoped they'd come around. But that was before things got worse, before Sarah came to me one night, eyes red and voice shaking, and said the words I never expected to hear. David, maybe we should postpone the wedding. I didn't answer her right away. The words hung in the air like smoke after a fire, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. Postpone the wedding. I finally said, trying to keep my voice calm. Sarah looked down at her hands, twisting her engagement ring absent-mindedly. I don't know. Your mom keeps calling. And your sister. She trailed off. She hasn't said anything directly, but it's like I can feel her resenting me. Like I'm the villain in some story I didn't even know I was in. It hurt to see her like that. This woman I loved more than anything, suddenly questioning whether our happiness was worth the fallout. That night, after she went to bed, I sat in the kitchen alone for hours, thinking, remembering. I thought about how, when Lily got engaged after just 3 months of dating, the whole family threw her a party. No one questioned the timing. No one said a word about emotional readiness. Mom called it a whirlwind romance like in the movies. When I proposed to Sarah, there was no party, no toast, just a concern. Do you think you're rushing into this? I tried to convince myself it wasn't personal, but now it was becoming clear it wasn't that they thought it was too soon. It was that it wasn't about Lily. Over the next week, things escalated. Sarah started getting texts from random family members, some I hadn't spoken to in years, suggesting she do the right thing and not steal someone else's healing space. It was insane. The wedding was about us, not Lily, not her broken marriage, not her ego. But the worst moment came when my mom showed up uninvited at our apartment. I opened the door and found her standing there, holding a tin of cookies like it was a peace offering. She stepped inside before I could say anything, sat down, smiled like nothing was wrong. Then she looked Sarah dead in the eyes and said, "Sweetheart, I know this wedding means a lot to you. But Lily's been through so much. I just don't think she can handle watching her brother move on while she's still in pieces." Sarah said nothing. Her face didn't move, but I saw her hands tighten into fists in her lap. I stepped in. "Mom, this isn't your call. We've planned this for almost a year. She turned to me, still with that soft, manipulative tone. I just thought if you really loved your sister, you'd wait, give her space to recover. Or, I said coldly, maybe Lily should learn how to support someone else for once. That ended the conversation. She left not long after, but the damage was done. Sarah pulled away that night, not physically, but emotionally. I could feel her retreating, and I realized something terrifying. If I didn't step up soon, I wouldn't just lose my wedding. I might lose her. I woke up the next morning to silence. Sarah was in the kitchen, staring blankly at her tea. No music, no morning banner, just that heavy quiet. The kind that settles in when love starts to feel like a burden. "We can still get married," she said softly, not looking at me. "Maybe just the two of us. A courthouse. No drama." It broke something in me. This wasn't her talking. This was exhaustion talking. This was the weight of being told over and over again that your happiness is selfish, your love too loud, your joy an offense. "No," I said, walking over. "We're not shrinking ourselves because other people can't handle seeing us happy." She blinked, surprised. I could see the push and pull in her eyes, part of her relieved, another part afraid. "What if they come to the wedding and make a scene?" she whispered. "Then they won't come," I said. And that was the first time I said it out loud. The first time I even allowed myself to consider the possibility. What if they didn't deserve to be there? That evening, I called my mom. She answered on the second ring, cheerful like nothing had happened. "Hi, sweetie. We need to talk," I said flatly. There was a pause. I could hear her tone shift instantly, like she knew the charm wasn't going to work this time. "I'm not postponing the wedding. And I'm not scaling it down. We're going through with it exactly as planned." She sighed. Long and dramatic, like I'd just announced someone died. "David, I just don't want to see this family torn apart." "No," I said, my voice rising. "What's tearing this family apart is you treating Lily like the center of the universe and acting like everyone else has to orbit around her." "She's hurting?" she snapped. "And so is Sarah." I snapped back. "But you don't care about that, do you?" "Because Sarah never needed saving. She just needed support." There was silence on the other end. I didn't wait for her to respond. I hung up. That should have been the end of it. But within 24 hours, the calls started. Cousins. An uncle I barely knew. One even left a voicemail telling me I should learn how to keep peace in the family. Turns out, my mom had started making the rounds, telling everyone that Sarah was tearing David away from his roots, and that I was choosing a woman over blood. Classic. But the last straw. Lily posted a photo of her in a white dress with the caption, "Some weddings are built on love. Others are just a performance." It got hundreds of likes, mostly from relatives. Sarah saw it. She didn't say anything. She just handed me her phone, opened to Lily's post, and walked away without a word. I stared at the screen. My heart dropped. This wasn't just petty anymore. This was calculated, public, cruel. And Sarah, she didn't cry, didn't scream. She just disappeared into our room, closing the door behind her. That's when I knew something had to change. I wasn't choosing between Sarah and my family anymore. That choice had already made itself. The real question was, would I keep letting them control the narrative of my life? Or finally take the pen back and write my own? I never thought I'd invite my own mother from my wedding. But here I was, staring at a blank email draft, fingers hovering over the keyboard, heart pounding like a war drum. Sarah was sitting next to me on the couch, silent but close. She hadn't asked me to do this. She hadn't said a word about my family since Lily's post. But her silence spoke volumes, and I was done letting other people speak louder than the truth. So I wrote, "T.S. Mom, I've tried to be patient. I've tried to understand. But over the past few months, your and Lily's behavior has made it painfully clear that this wedding, our wedding, is not something you support. The constant guilt tripping, the rumors, the subtle jabs, and now the public humiliation have crossed a line. This event is supposed to be about love, not manipulation. For that reason, I've decided to uninvite you and Lily from the ceremony. I won't subject Sarah or myself to any more of this behavior on what should be the happiest day of our lives. I hope someday you understand why I had to make this decision, but I'm not waiting around for that day to come." David, I stared at it for a full minute before hitting send. When I finally did, it felt like cutting off an oxygen tube. Terrifying but also freeing. The first reply came only 20 minutes later. Subject line: "You broke this family." It was from my mom, of course, filled with dramatic phrases like, "I never thought my own son would betray me," and "You've chosen a stranger over your own blood." She even threw in a jab about how my dad, if he were still alive, would be ashamed of the man you've become. I didn't reply. Then came Lily. Her message was nastier. She accused me of being jealous of her resilience, said I was punishing her for being more loved, and ended with, "You'll regret this when you realize Sarah was just a phase." It took everything in me not to scream. But I didn't respond to her either. Instead, I turned off my phone and went for a walk. I needed air. I needed silence. When I got back, there were 7 missed calls, 3 voicemails, and 4 new emails, all from extended family. Some begged me to make peace for the sake of family. One cousin said, "I can't believe you'd humiliate your mother like this." Another simply said, "You've changed." And maybe I had. Maybe I'd finally stopped performing. But then a message came through that I didn't expect. My dad's sister, Aunt Rachel. We hadn't been close in years. She'd moved to another state when I was in college. But her email was short and clear. "David, I saw the post. I heard what they've been saying. You did the right thing. Don't let them gaslight you into guilt. I'm proud of you." I stared at her words until they blurred on the screen. A few minutes later, another message. This one from my cousin Mark. "About time someone stood up to them. If you need help on the day, I've got your back." I felt the sting behind my eyes. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel alone. Maybe I had lost a mother and a sister. But I was starting to find something else, a family that chose me back. The morning of the wedding was perfect. Clear skies, crisp air. The kind of calm that almost tricks you into thinking nothing could go wrong. Sarah looked radiant. Her dress shimmered in the early light as we did our first look in the garden behind the venue. I could still hear her laugh, soft, nervous, but full of love. It felt like a scene from a life I had waited my whole life to live. Then Amanda, my best friend and our unofficial coordinator, came rushing toward us with a look that made my stomach drop. "They're here," she said out of breath. I didn't need to ask who. Security stopped them at the gate. She continued, "But they're refusing to leave. Your mom's crying. Lily's yelling." Sarah's smile faded. She closed her eyes and exhaled. "Of course they came." I turned to Amanda. "Keep them out, no matter what. No negotiation." She nodded and rushed off. From the bridal suite, we could hear them. Even through walls and distance, the voices carried. My mother's high-pitched wail, Lily's sharp, biting anger. At one point, someone shouted, "This is OUR family too." Guests were arriving by then. Some turned their heads toward the commotion. Some started whispering. And I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Sarah sat on the edge of a chair, clutching her bouquet tighter than she should have. Her knuckles had gone pale. "I'm so sorry," I said quietly. She shook her head. "Don't be. You didn't bring this drama. They did." Still, the guilt twisted inside me. I had tried to stop this. I had warned them. You invited them. But they didn't care. They needed the last word. 15 minutes before the ceremony, one of the venue managers came in. "They're threatening to call the police on us," she said, half laughing in disbelief. "Your sister claims we're violating her rights." I almost laughed too. Almost. But then I said calmly, "Call them a ride. Have security walk them to it. If they resist, let them call the police. Either way, I don't want them near the building." She nodded. "Understood." 5 minutes later, I watched through the window as Lily and my mom were escorted, still yelling, to a waiting car. Just before she stepped inside, Lily turned and shouted, "You'll regret this, David! You'll regret cutting off your own family." Guests heard it. Some gasped. Others looked at me. I didn't flinch. I didn't respond. Instead, I walked over to Sarah, took her hand, and whispered, "They can scream all they want. But this is still our day." She smiled. Not the nervous one this time. A real smile. One of peace. And when we walked down that aisle, with music swelling and people we loved smiling back at us, it felt like everything we'd fought for had been worth it. During the reception, word of what happened at the gate spread. People came up to me one by one, not with pity, but with praise. "You handled that with grace. You protected her. That's what matters. I've never seen anyone stand up like that to your mom. You were right to." And then, something I didn't expect, one of my mom's old friends, a woman I hadn't seen in a decade, took my hand and said, "She lost control of the story today. But you took it back." And everyone saw it. Later that night, Aunt Rachel hugged me tight and whispered, "They thought they'd humiliate you. All they did was show the world who they really are." I didn't reply. Because in that moment, I knew something that words couldn't express. They didn't ruin our wedding. They made it unforgettable. 2 days after the wedding, I finally opened the folder. It had been sitting on my desktop for weeks. Titled simply, "Receipts." Screenshots of the messages Lily had sent Sarah in the months leading up to the wedding. At first, they were passive-aggressive, then not so passive, and eventually, downright inappropriate, flirtatious, manipulative, undeniable. One of them still made my blood boil. "I don't think David really sees you. Not the real you. You deserve someone who truly understands what it's like to feel invisible." Another, "Sometimes I wonder if we met in another life, if things would have been different between us." Sarah had shown them to me right away. She never responded to any of them, but she had saved everything. Back then, we didn't share it. We didn't want more drama. But now, after the scene they caused at the wedding, after Lily screamed about being cut off, and after my mother painted us as the villains, we were done being quiet. I wrote a single email, addressed to my extended family. Kept it short. Kept it sharp. Dear all, many of you reached out to express concern about why I chose to exclude my mother and sister from my wedding. I haven't replied. Until now. Attached are a series of messages that Lily sent to Sarah over the past few months. I trust you'll see for yourselves why that behavior crossed a line. We stayed silent to keep the peace. But silence is no longer peace, it's complicity. I don't need everyone to agree with me. But I won't allow a false narrative to circulate unchecked. This is the truth. You can believe whatever you choose. But this is where I stand. David. Then I attached the screenshots, hit send, and closed the laptop. For the first time in a long time, I felt no fear. I didn't wait for responses, but they came anyway. One aunt, who had scolded me weeks earlier for being harsh, sent a simple message. I had no idea. I'm sorry. Another cousin replied, wow, Lily's always been a little much, but this is next level. You did the right thing. And then, unexpectedly, my uncle, my mom's older brother, called me. His voice was quiet. Heavy. I always knew your mom protected Lily too much, he said. But I didn't know it had come to this. I didn't say much. I didn't need to. Because, finally, the silence was breaking. The narrative was no longer theirs to twist. They had tried to ruin our wedding. They had tried to turn family against us. But with one truth laid bare, the spell cracked. And those who had blindly defended them, now they had to sit in the discomfort of reality. In the days following the email, something strange happened. Things got quiet. Not the cold silence I'd grown used to. The kind that came from guilt trips and emotional withdrawal. This was a different kind of silence. No more calls accusing me of being ungrateful. No more passive-aggressive messages asking if I'd come to my senses. No more thinly veiled posts about family loyalty. Just stillness. And then, one by one, voices I hadn't expected started speaking up. My cousin Emily, one of Lily's longtime defenders, messaged me on Instagram. I saw the screenshots. I was wrong. I should have asked your side earlier. I'm really sorry, David. Another message came from my godfather, who hadn't said a word through the whole ordeals. I stayed quiet because I didn't know who to believe. Now I do. You're building a life, son, and you protected it. That matters more than keeping the peace with people who don't value it. Even the venue staff sent us a handwritten note. In all our years hosting weddings, we've rarely seen a groom handle a situation with that much grace under pressure. Thank you for trusting us. I showed it to Sarah over coffee. She smiled, but I could still see the fatigue in her eyes, the kind that lingers after emotional war. You okay? I asked. She reached for my hand. I am now. And I believed her. But not everyone took the shift well. I heard from Megan, one of my few relatives who stayed loyal throughout, that Lily had gone full damage control. She was calling people, saying the messages were taken out of context, accusing Sarah of setting her up. But the tide had already turned. Even those who once sympathized with her now kept their distance. And as for my mother, she went radio silent. No apology, no explanation. Just a void where her voice used to be. At first, I thought I'd feel relief. Then I felt a kind of sadness, not because I missed the manipulation, but because I finally accepted something I hadn't wanted to admit. I had never been the favorite. I had just been tolerated. Until I stopped playing along. But here's what I realized: I didn't need their approval to be whole. Because the family I was building, with Sarah, with the people who chose me back, that was real. That was enough. We didn't go on a fancy honeymoon. Instead, Sarah and I rented a quiet cabin by a lake a few hours away. No phones, no emails. Just the two of us, wrapped in blankets, watching the snow fall outside the window, while old jazz played softly in the background. It was the first time in months I felt my shoulders drop. The first time I didn't feel like I had to explain myself to anyone. On the third morning, I turned my phone back on, just to check. There were a few more messages. Some apologies, a few attempts at justification. One from my mom, 3 words long, please come home. But I didn't respond. Because I was already home. Home wasn't the house I grew up in. It wasn't the people who said, blood is thicker, right before they turned their backs. It wasn't the version of me I had to shrink to be accepted. Home was here, next to a woman who had been dragged through every storm my family stirred up and still stood by me with grace. We talked a lot on that trip. About boundaries, about future holidays, about what it meant to build a life free from the ghosts of expectation. And when we drove back, hand in hand, I knew something with complete clarity. You don't owe loyalty to those who use love as leverage. You owe it to the people who show up when love is tested. So no, I didn't forgive and forget. I remembered, and I moved on. Because in the end, I didn't just uninvite my family from a wedding. I uninvited them from the parts of my life they never truly supported. And somehow, that made room for everything I'd always wanted.